I think we are live. So, hi everyone. Finally, it's me here with my first podcast. And it took me a lot of time because I had to go through a lot of complex treatment because of my shoulder. But I'm back with my first podcast and my first guest. And this is a very special podcast for me because my first podcast would be, something special. It took me a lot of time, and now I'm here with my first guest, who is Meghla Bhardwaj. Meghla Bhardwaj, I would like to give a brief introduction about her, and then we will start from Meghla. Hi, Meghla, how are you?
I'm doing great, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And it's so exciting that I'm your very first guest. Wow, that's a huge honor. Thank you so much for that.
You're most welcome, and I feel like so happy that I'm having my first guest, and it's you. So let me give you a brief introduction about yourself, and then we will start with few questions that you have to tell about the audience, right? So Meghla Bharadwaj has been in this industry from last 24 plus years, and this is like having me born, and then Meghla has been starting his sourcing agency. So like I'm 24 years old and she has 24 years of experience, right? So this is some kind of fascinating thing. So Meghla has been over this industry from last 23 years in basically Asia sourcing industry. Meghla provides valuable insights into sourcing, market trends, and international trades. She is a thought leader who has spoken at over 150 plus global conferences, podcasts, and webinars. She also has visited hundreds of factories and tens of trade shows in China, India, and Vietnam, gaining a deep understanding of manufacturing and sourcing processes in India. She is also founder of Indian Sourcing Network, which is a new age sourcing agency that helps overseas importers develop and optimize their sourcing strategy. This company, the Indian Sourcing Network, finds the best factories in India and Vietnam, delivers quality product and the competitive prices, and ensures on-time delivery. So this is the introduction of Meghla, and I would like Meghla to explain a lot more about this thing initially, and then we will ask the question and answers.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Daniel. And yeah, I'm feeling very old now because you're like 24 years old. Yeah, and that's when I started. So, yeah, I mean, I've just had a lot of experience in the sourcing industry overall in the Philippines and China. I lived and worked in China for 10 years and then in Singapore and now back in India. So, we're basically helping global importers and Amazon e-commerce sellers from around the world and all other types of importers basically to source products from India, Vietnam, also Pakistan. We're also looking at Pakistan to source some products, and even Turkey. That's another country that we're looking at nowadays because a lot of people are actually looking for alternatives to China.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. Why people are looking at alternatives. But yeah, I mean that's basically what we focus on.
Sounds great. Sounds great. So, comparing it with China, like what makes the Indian and Vietnam sourcing different? You see, like majority, maybe we could say like 90% of the sellers are focused towards China. So, what makes it different, or what are the speciality? Like, if you talk about Pakistan, they're good in manufacturing textile. They are good in manufacturing leather. So, what makes the Indian sourcing and Vietnam sourcing different? Like, do they have a cultural history? Do they have some kind of background in those specific niches or specific products? So, what you would like to say about that?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, a lot of importers, global importers, are looking to diversify outside of China
Hmm.
for multiple reasons. And one of the reasons is that production costs have been increasing in China
Yeah.
for over like maybe the last 10 years or so. Gradually, costs have been increasing because wages are increasing and suppliers are becoming more sophisticated and more Chinese suppliers are moving up the value chain.
Hmm.
So for example, a lot of the apparel production, basic apparel production, has actually moved out of China because
Oh.
prices were increasing. So say, countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Vietnam have emerged because global brands are looking for cheaper alternatives, right? So that's one reason, rising production costs in China. Secondly, there's a lot of trade tension between the West, specifically US and China. So that's another reason why people don't want to put all their eggs in one basket and they want to diversify outside to different countries. Because, what if there are trade tariffs? What if there are more trade tariffs on imports into the US? Like currently, there's, over like 25 to 30% tariffs on a wide range of products. And if Trump comes back into power,
Yeah.
then he has already said that he's going to impose like over 60% of tariffs. So
Yeah.
that's another huge risk for companies. And in fact, many new Amazon sellers, they don't want to go to China. They want to go to other countries because they just don't want to take that risk. However, having said that, China is the main manufacturing hub. There's no other country in the world currently that can compete with China because it has so much, like the supply chains are so developed. There's so many different products that are manufactured there. However, other countries like India, Vietnam, Pakistan are emerging as sourcing hubs, and they specialize in different categories. So each country specializes in specific categories based on, as you said, their history and the resources that are available. So let's talk about India first of all. Now, India
Sounds good.
specializes in a lot of natural materials. So, for example, cotton, textiles, and cotton apparel. That is one of India's biggest product categories, and specifically organic textiles. Then there's a lot of home decor items, gift
Mhm.
items that are made out of natural materials such as wood, glass, ceramic, leather, those types of things as well. Then there is, of course, leather. Leather is produced in India as well. So leather garments, bags, jackets, shoes, equestrian products, for example. All of those items made out of leather. That's a big industry in India too. And then we also have, things like home furnishings. So whether
Oh,
it's carpets, cushion covers, bed sheets, bed covers, that's a huge industry as well. And specifically, cotton, linen, those types of materials. Then fashion is a big category. Fashion accessories such as bags, belts, hats, shoes, different types of shoes. And
mhm.
then we have food items like herbal
Mhm.
supplements. For example, shilajit. Shilajit is available
Yeah.
in Pakistan as well. That's one of big big products from
Oh, yeah.
there. Um, yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, all of these different categories. So, India does not do a lot of electronics, for example, for
Okay.
exports currently. There is electronics production in India. However, it's mostly done by the top brands. For example, Samsung, Apple, Xiaomi has
Yeah.
facility over here. So most of the electronics are produced for the domestic market, and they are brands. However, there are other types of like smaller consumer electronics also being produced nowadays, like headphones, headsets. So currently, they're mostly focused on the domestic market. But gradually, as the supply chain develops, these companies will also start to export. So I think down the line, India will also develop as a production hub for electronics. But
Mhm.
as of now, nobody can beat China in electronics.
All
um,
right.
so if we take Vietnam,
Mhm.
now Vietnam also specializes in different products, and one of their biggest categories is footwear, especially
Okay.
sports footwear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nike set up their factory. I think like five or 8 years ago, and since then the footwear industry has really developed. And again, Nike was looking for low cost alternatives to China. That's one of the reasons why they moved out of China into Vietnam. So footwear has grown substantially. Furniture is another big category from Vietnam. All types of upholstered wooden furniture. There are huge, gigantic factories that are producing, really high quality furniture. Then we've also got things like bags, backpacks, luggage. That's another specialized category. Textiles, sportswear. Now, in Vietnam, a lot of the materials are still imported from China because
China. Yeah.
Vietnam, of course, is a very small country, doesn't have too much, too many resources as such. So, a lot of the materials, and there's proximity to China, right? So, that's why materials are sort of imported from China. And a lot of the factories in Vietnam are actually China invested. So there are, of course, local companies as well, but many of them are set up by Chinese companies or they have Chinese management. So, yeah.
That sounds cool. You have mentioned a lot of products and a lot of things that a new seller or maybe old seller can focus on. So there's this one question, like what could be the challenges? When we go to China, we have a streamlined process, but when it comes to India or Vietnam, what could be the challenges an importer could find? Like I'm supposed to join you, or I'm supposed to source product from China, Vietnam, or India. So what could be the challenges that could come in my way?
Yeah, that's a great question, Daniel. And the first challenge is finding suppliers.
Hmm.
That's the biggest challenge. So, I
Yeah.
mean, China has Alibaba, right? And so,
Yeah.
literally, a lot of suppliers are on Alibaba. Although a lot of companies on Alibaba are trading companies, and that becomes a bit difficult. But at least you can find suppliers on Alibaba, and that's where most people start. But there is no really Alibaba for Vietnam or India. I mean,
Yeah.
there are Vietnamese suppliers and Indian suppliers on Alibaba. So if you do a search for a specific product, you can use the country location filter
Hmm.
to find suppliers from different countries. However, of course, Alibaba is very China focused, and there are very few
Yeah.
companies from other countries. So that's one challenge that people will face. That it's not easy to find suppliers. It's not easy to vet suppliers because even if you do find a supplier online, it's
Yeah.
difficult to tell what their capabilities are. Are they really a factory? Are they really exporting? Because especially in India, a lot of companies just focus on the domestic market.
Hmm.
And so that becomes a challenge because a lot of these companies are not aware of the requirements of export markets, what the quality standards are. Some of them don't even have export licenses. So if you place an order with one such company, then sometimes it gets difficult just to even get the product out of the country.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge as well. Vetting suppliers. How do you trust somebody in India or Vietnam, and how do you place an order with them, without even knowing who they are? So I
Hmm.
think that's one issue that we have faced. Also, in India, language is less of a problem.
Hmm.
That's not
Yeah.
a challenge, I would say, because a lot of the suppliers would speak English, so communication kind of becomes easy. In Vietnam, sometimes translators are needed because not all suppliers speak fluent English, but usually the export-focused ones, have
Hmm.
an English-speaking professional or a marketing executive that will speak English. Apart from this, I think the other challenge is that not, I mean, both of these countries don't make all products. There's a limited number of products
Yeah.
that are available in both countries. So, that's a limitation because China makes everything, literally, like anything and everything. But
Exactly.
then these countries they specialize in certain items. Yeah, I think those are some of the challenges that I can think of.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so we have talked about the disadvantages or the challenges that we could face. What makes India and Vietnam unique? Like, what is the speciality that one should always look for these countries rather than going for China? So, what is the unique or USP of these countries?
Yeah. So first of all, for India, one of
Hmm.
the USPs is that there's a lot of handcrafted items that are produced in India that are not produced anywhere else. So there are different production centers in the country that specialize in different materials, and there are artisans that make these items, and these artisans are basically very skilled in producing products from that material, and the skills have been transferred from generation to generation. So their grandfathers used to make these items for the kings and queens of those times, hundreds of years ago. And so they are actually producing the same items for exports today. So for example, there's a city of Moradabad in North India that specializes in metalworks, and so there's a lot of like brass, iron, aluminium, all of the metal items come out of the city, and there are skilled artisans who actually produce all of these metal items. In fact, a lot of the artisans in Moradabad, they're Muslims. The families and all, they have been producing and making these handicraft items for a really long time. Then similarly, there is Saharanpur, which is for wooden products. And there's another city for ceramics. For leather, there's another production hub. So that's one, USP of India, that these kinds of items you'll not find in other countries because they are unique to India. The handcrafted style is very unique to India. For example, for wood, a lot of the manufacturers will use mango wood, which is
Hmm.
not very commonly used in other countries. Like it's not used in China or Vietnam. It's mostly used in India and also in Thailand, for some products. But that's a very unique kind of wood. It is easy to use. It has a very beautiful grain. So that's another USP. And for both of these countries, labor costs are very low, so that's
Yeah.
another advantage. If you are looking for maybe a product that is that requires labor to manufacture, like garments, or
Mhm.
maybe even bags, backpacks, for example, that requires cutting, sewing, and some sort of manual work, then that the prices of those products can be much cheaper in these countries, because labor is much cheaper in India and Vietnam compared to China.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So let's talk about the seasonal product, right? So it's very much hot here in Pakistan. I believe it must be same in India as well. So we
Super
have been
hot.
exporting uh, a lot of mangoes. Especially you mentioned the mango tree, and I'm thinking about
Yeah.
the mango. We have been
Yeah.
exporting these seasonal item a lot. So what's the thing that come from India or especially in Vietnam that could be a seasonal product? Maybe a fruit or maybe something for a season, So what is those things?
Yeah, I mean, for India, there's a lot of fruits that are definitely exported, like fruits and vegetables. So mangoes, lychees,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure if watermelons and those types of fruits are exported, but I definitely know that mangoes are exported in very high volumes. Um, um, some flowers, there's flower exports as well. And what else in terms of seasonal items? I mean, there's commodities like
Hmm.
rice and wheat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those kinds of commodities are also exported, but they're mostly all year round. There's vegetables like onions, potatoes, all of those are also exported.
Cool.
There's spices, but spices are, of course, all year round. India is like known for spices. Yeah, I can't think of any other seasonal products as such.
Hmm.
From Vietnam too. Most products are just like merchandise that is
Yeah.
manufactured and that can be exported all year round, basically.
Okay. So you mentioned like you have been managing the trade shows as well, So
Mhm.
like India sourcing trip, you have been running that as well. So what role these trade shows and factory visits play in sourcing process? How much they are effective and what benefits they have given you so far?
Yeah, amazing question. So I think if you are sourcing a product from
Mhm.
any country, once you visit the country, once you visit your factories, once you visit a trade show over there, it just changes the game completely. I mean, there's so much of a difference, between sourcing online and visiting the factory, and there are some huge advantages. So first of all, if you're sourcing from a country and you visit your factory, you are basically telling the factory that you are a serious buyer, that you have skin in the game, that you have invested the time and money to travel all the way to the country to visit the factory, and so
Yeah.
they know that you're a serious buyer, and they will give you better pricing, better terms, better treatment, priority treatment. So they will value you as a customer compared to somebody who just emails them online or just deals with them online, right? Because
Yeah.
they have seen you face to face, right? That's one thing. Secondly, as you know, in Asia, relationships are really important, whether it's
Exactly.
in China or Pakistan or India. So once you meet somebody face to face, you look in their eye and shake hands with them and share a meal, that just changes the dynamic so much. The next time you call your supplier after you've had a meal with them or a couple of drinks, they're gonna like instantly pick up your call, and they're gonna like talk to you. Also, a lot of times, you sort of become friends with the supplier as well. You visit them multiple times. You go to you go out for meals with them. You learn about their families, their history, their culture. So that can only happen when you meet face to face. It can't really happen over WeChat or WhatsApp. So I think that's a big advantage of visiting the factory. Also, when you visit the factory, then you can actually understand the production process. You can actually know the limitations and the capabilities of your supplier, and that
Yeah.
will help you make so many different decisions in your production. Because maybe there's something in the production process that is maybe making the product more expensive, or is adding some sort of a complexity to the production process that you can't really tell when you're not there, but when you're there, you're seeing the assembly line and everything. So that also makes a difference, like understanding the process. Visiting a trade show, oh my gosh, that is just huge. So when you visit a trade show, first of all, if you're in the sourcing industry, you will feel like you're a kid in a candy store when you're at a trade show, because just seeing all of the hundreds and thousands of products over there, it's just amazing. It speeds up the process, the sourcing process, because you've got hundreds and thousands of suppliers and products in one place, and you can see all of the products, touch and feel them. You can tell the quality of the product, and it just makes the process so much faster. If you're sourcing online, you have to, contact maybe 10 suppliers, get samples from two suppliers. Maybe you don't like them, then contact two more suppliers, get more samples. It can take weeks or even months sometimes to get samples from multiple suppliers, right? Before you finally decide on which supplier to go with. But here you're seeing products from so many suppliers at the same time. So it just speeds up the process, and you can immediately start vetting suppliers, for your product. Also, you can get so many product ideas, because a lot of the companies that exhibit in these trade shows, whether in India or China or Vietnam, they don't put all of their products on their websites. Most of these companies, they launch products or showcase their unique products at the trade shows. So if you are looking for unique products, I mean, just walk down a trade show, walk down an aisle in a trade show, and you're seeing products on both sides. And there may be products that you've not even thought about, that these, can be sourced in these countries. So there's so many product ideas when you go to a trade show. I think that's another advantage. Also, at the trade show, when you're talking to suppliers, again, they know that you're serious. So when you go back to your country, contact them and say that, hey, I had met you at the trade show. Again, they're
Yeah.
going to be so much more receptive, and know that you are, really a serious buyer, and treat you very differently.
Okay, that's cool. I would like to ask about your services as well. You have been running an Indian sourcing network as well. So, what services does Indian sourcing network offer to help importers streamlining their sources processing, and like, what is your help throughout this process?
Right. So India Sourcing Network is basically a sourcing agency, and
Mhm.
we manage the entire sourcing process from start to end. So it starts with finding suppliers for the buyer, and then we, do all of the processes. So, for example, pricing, negotiation, packaging, developing samples, prototypes, helping buyers place orders, payments, and also QC. So the entire process, starting from finding suppliers to final QC and inspection, is done by us. And we're sort of like an extension of a buyer's office and team. We are their eyes and ears on the ground in India and also Vietnam. We have a team in Vietnam as well, and we basically represent buyers in the different countries. So that's what we do with India Sourcing Network. And then with India Sourcing Trip, we basically bring buyers to India to help them learn all about how to source from India, to help them source products, and to also experience India's culture. So this is an 8-day trip where we do a full day conference to teach people how to source from India. We take them to a trade show for 3 days, and then we also do some cultural activities. So if you are, really ready to increase your sourcing from India or even Vietnam, we also do a Vietnam trip. This is a really good way to immerse yourself and
Yeah.
to really jumpstart the sourcing process from that country.
That's cool. That's cool. So, regarding the future, like, what kind of trend do you see in Asia regarding the sourcing from India and Vietnam? Like, how do you see the future, and how do you see its impact? Our whether in Amazon industry, whether you said like handcrafted, it is mostly sold on Etsy as well. The premium product. So, how do you see the future?
Yeah, I think the future is really bright
Mhm.
for all of these countries, whether it's India, Vietnam, Pakistan, Turkey.
Mhm.
The future, as I see it for sourcing, is going to be very fragmented and diversified. China is not going to be the main or the only production hub. It's going to lose its shine. Of course, for many years to come, China will continue to be, the key source of all products. However, a lot of other production hubs and countries are going to develop, and they are already developing. So I see that trend, very strongly continuing, because more people want to diversify and look at other regions. Also, buyers in the US want to look at places like Mexico that are closer to them, so that delivery times are much shorter. Of course, Mexico has its own challenges, and it has not really developed as a production hub until now. But in the future, that might happen as well. In fact, for many categories, I would say that China is struggling with many categories. So, for example, apparel production is going down in China, significantly. I know people on the ground over there. I've worked for a Hong Kong-based company for 20 years, which is Global Sources. So I understand the trends that are, happening over there. So yeah, I think that's the future. That a lot of the alternative production hubs are going to become more important increasingly.
Good, good. So we would like to come towards my favorite question, and this
Yeah.
is out of Indian sourcing trip or Indian sourcing net. Your experience with Shark Tank, every one of us like Shark Tank, whether it's UK,
Yeah.
US, or India. So you have been appeared on Indian Shark Tank as well. So what was your experience and how it went like? And everybody would like to listen, like how it feels like to be on the Shark Tank. So that's
Yeah.
my question I really wanted to ask.
Okay. Yeah. So I was on Shark Tank earlier this year with my uncle, who owns a toy factory. So these toys are made out of natural rubber, very
So,
cool products. And so I was helping him at his factory. And then, we decided to go on Shark Tank, and it just happened. So it was a very cool process. It was very, eye opening. Like, a lot of people think that, oh, Shark Tank is just, it's just like a TV show, nothing else. No, they ask very serious questions, and there's so
oh,
much preparation that we have to do before going on to the show. So, for example, the very first step is just we had to fill out a form, like a basic form. Then the
okay.
second step was like an extremely detailed form about the company, the history, the director's history, and the financials. Like, they really go into the financials and everything. So we had to provide a lot of documentation, and also we had to provide videos of the factory, and we had to produce our own videos. So it was a very long process, like the second stage. Once we
Oh,
passed that stage, then the third stage was an audition. It was an in-person audition. So we
oh,
had to do
okay.
that here. Yeah, so it was in Delhi, and it was at a hotel. So we had to go there, and there were some, like, three or four people who interviewed us. They were, of course, not the sharks, but some of
Mhm.
their assistants or something.
Yeah.
But it was like a full-blown Shark Tank, episode over there. There were cameras, lights, and there were three people sitting there. We had to bring all of our samples. So that was like almost 1.5 hour interview. Again, it was going very, very deep into the company, the future plans, the past history, like really, really tough questions. And they don't tell us what questions they will ask. They can ask anything.
Oh,
So
okay.
after that happened, after the
Mhm.
third round, so this is the third round of the audition, then the final round is they call you to Mumbai for the recording. And so we did that recording in Mumbai. And again, we don't know what questions they will ask, right? We didn't know that. So only the first 3 minutes of the whole episode is actually prepared by us. But after that,
Okay.
after the first 3 minute pitch is over, then
Mhm.
it's just, the sharks can ask you anything. So you don't know what they will ask you, or
Wow, that's
what they will
that's
do,
interesting,
maybe.
And on
Yeah,
TV, when you
it's
see,
not,
feel like it's like so much easy, and I wasn't
yeah,
aware that there's so much step involved, and
it's
people think like this
huge.
is
Yeah.
scripted and whatever it is. But yeah, I feel like
It
it's a
took
huge
us like
responsibility.
almost 5 months for the entire
Wow.
process. So we applied in June, and then finally the recording was in December, and it aired in February. So it took a long time.
Wow.
And also, it's not scripted at all. Like, many people think it's scripted,
Yeah.
but it's not scripted. Only the first 3 minutes is scripted. And the whole interview was maybe around 1 hour or so, but then, of course, they
Oh,
edit it
wow.
down, and they only present like 15 minutes for each episode. So, for
Mhm.
example, for my episode, like, all it was because my uncle is 70 years old, so the whole episode focus was on him, and how a
Yeah.
70-year-old entrepreneur
Exactly.
can is producing,
Yeah, I have
yeah,
seen
these
that
items
video,
and
and
all.
it's quite inspiring,
It did well.
And I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
wondering, who is this lady? When I was watching that video, who is this
yeah.
lady? This is similar quite similar, and then I
Yeah.
asked you and you confirm, yes, this was me, so
Yeah.
yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah. So they basically, I mean, I didn't have on the episode on the lives when they edited it, there was not much that I said. But during the recording, like I had said a lot. My aunt had also said a lot, but then they cut everything out. So it was only my uncle who was like doing the talking.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, but it was fun. It was really good experience.
Of course, of course. So, yeah, it's a new experience, and okay. So, coming to our last question, and this would be the question I would be asking from every single person coming onto this podcast. So, uh, we are youth, right? You have experience of like 20 to 25 years, and everyone of us wants to be quick rich, especially this youth after post COVID. Everyone wants to be
Yeah.
quick rich, whether it's crypto, whether it's Amazon. Everyone wants money, 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 money. So what advice you would give to them, whether it's youth, whether it's another person, whoever is looking for the quick rich scheme? So what is your advice to them?
Yeah. I think, first of all, I don't believe in quick rich schemes. I mean,
Hmm.
yes, there are businesses that will help you make money fast,
Yeah.
but it has to be the right way. I mean, quick rich schemes are basically, they don't sound very, ethical. There's something hanky panky with any quick rich scheme. But yeah, I think the key to success, I believe, is that you have to work smart, first of all. Of course, you have to work hard, but you have to work smart. That doesn't mean that you have to, like be too smart or be clever or be, not be ethical. I think it's really important to be ethical in business. That's what I strongly believe. But you have to make the smart decisions, smart choices. Try to be more efficient as
Mhm.
much as possible. Don't try to do everything yourself. I think that's one big mistake that we as entrepreneurs also make. We
Yeah.
think that, oh, we can do this, we can do this, but each person has their own capabilities, their own skill sets. So we as entrepreneurs, I think, need to understand what our capabilities are, and then hire more people or outsource the other things that we don't really, specialize in, or it's not our expertise. So I think that's another thing. Like, don't do everything yourself, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Know your limitations and when you need to get help from people. Also, I think that it's important to balance life and
Hmm.
work. Sometimes we
Yeah.
just get so involved in our work that we think, okay, this is our life, but
True.
life is
You
life
can see
and
my
work
bed.
is
You can
work.
see my bed here right away. So I just jumped
Yeah,
from here to here, and that's my life right now.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, this is a great age to do that. Like in your 20s is when
Yeah.
you can experiment and you can take risks. Actually, that's another one that I want to say, take risks, especially
Mhm.
when you are young, when you're in your 20s, 30s.
Mhm.
That's the time to take risk. And, I wish I had taken some risks earlier. Like, I took
Mhm.
my risk of starting my business when I was like 40 years old. That was
Oh,
too old. Yeah, I started my business just 5 years ago. Before that, I was in a corporate job, and it
okay.
was very comfortable. When you're in a job, it becomes very
Okay.
comfortable, and you
Yeah.
don't want to go out of your comfort zone because you're settled, you're getting a good salary and everything. But when you're in business or like you're a freelancer, it's
Yeah.
riskier. But of course, more risk, more reward. So
Exactly.
take risks. I think that's another thing that I would say.
Awesome, and awesome of advices. Awesome podcast we had today, and I would like to end it here. We might not have questions because my channel is quite new and there won't be any question. But I would really like thank you, thanks to you. You came on my podcast regardless of having my subscriber, regardless of the fact I do not have any kind of audience, but you still came, and I really appreciate this. You are my first guest, and I hope we will continue this relationship for a longer term. And I really thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Daniel. I'm sure your podcast will grow. I mean, everybody starts from zero, everybody
Exactly.
starts from one. And I have seen you do great work with, different people in the
Yeah.
industry. So, yeah, I totally, I'm sure that this podcast will be very successful. And I will be back probably in the 100th episode or so when you'll have
Of
hundreds
course,
of
yes,
subscribers or
100%.
thousands of
100%.
subscribers.
Of course, of course. And lastly, tell the people like how they could find you or how they could connect with you.
Yeah, so the best way is to look at our websites, indiasourcing.net and indiasourcingtrip.com. Those are
Okay.
the two key, and of course we have vietnamsourcingtrip.com as well, and vietnamsourcingnetwork.com. But you can also reach out to me on Facebook on Messenger or Instagram or LinkedIn, all of the social media channels. I'm there. So just reach out anywhere.
Sounds great. Sounds great. I have shared the links as well on the webinar as well, so people could find
Yeah.
these links as well. And
Awesome.
this is it. We would like to end
Okay.
it here. And thank you again, Meghla. It was
Thank
lovely
you so
talking
much,
with you.
Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Likewise.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.